Lovely viewers, glad to have you on board today. We have a special guest, the UK Ambassador to Somalia, Mr. Mike Nithimvriakis. I hope I've pronounced your name right.
Very good.
Thank you. Just to commence with, tell us, who is Mike?
I'm the British Ambassador to Somalia. I have been here for 6 months, since May 2023, and I'm a career diplomat who has served in a number of countries, and I am very proud to be His Majesty's Ambassador to Somalia.
Thank you. 6 months, as we've already mentioned, in Somalia. What is the experience working in Somalia so far, so good?
I've had a fantastic experience. The UK has an extremely long partnership with this country. We were the first Western embassy to return in 2013, so we've been here for more than 10 years, and we are discussing with the government a much longer term partnership that will take us through the next generation, and we are focused on a huge range of priorities here, from security, defence, politics, humanitarian development. That means this is an incredibly interesting, busy, stimulating role. The people are incredibly welcoming. I've met a large number of Somali ministers, politicians, civil society, journalists, business people. I have travelled a little bit, although I would like to see more of the country. And so, yes, I am a very happy, satisfied diplomat.
Thank you. Regarding on that note, why did you leave Milan for Somalia? Why did you choose to come to work here in Somalia?
Why did I leave Milan? That's a very good question. I left Milan because of the opportunity to work in the Horn of Africa. I have not spent much of my career in Africa. I was in Ghana 25 years ago and had a fantastic posting in the western side of the continent. And much as I was enjoying the work in Italy, where I was focusing mainly on trade and investment, and Milan is a wonderful city, the opportunity to come and work on the range of issues that I just mentioned at a time of such significant change and opportunity, as well as challenge, is what motivates most diplomats. And so it was too good a chance to turn down. I mean, I literally jumped at the opportunity. And so although it has a very different approach to how one would be a consul general in a city like Milan to being an ambassador in a country like Somalia, it is why I joined the British Foreign Service, and so far I have no regrets with my decision.
Is your daughter happy with your decision?
Oh yes, well she was initially a little bit upset because she had plans to visit Italy to see some of the fashion capitals of the world there, and she knows that she's not going to be able to do that so easily in Somalia, but she has come round to the idea that her father is now living in Mogadishu and is very interested in the role that I am undertaking here.
Good. What's in your experience so far so good in the 6 months you've been in Somalia? What are the positive that we can take that's really working for Somalia?
Yes, it's a great question. I would say that my first main reflection is that it is quite easy in Somalia to maybe feel on a day-to-day basis a little pessimistic about some events. You know, there could be a security reversal, there could be a political challenge, there might be a humanitarian need that has been exposed. It might make one feel, when you look at the fight against Al-Shabaab, or the rising risks of El Nino, or the challenges of the constitutional review, or what is happening in Lasanod in Somaliland, it might be easy for people to feel that these are really enormous challenges. But I would say that perhaps does not take into account the incredible journey that Somalia has been on over the last 10 years. If one looks at where the country has come from, even in the last 2 years, I think Somali people deserve enormous credit and congratulations for the progress the country has made, the strides they have taken, and the successes that they have achieved. Now, the UK, I think, would say that we have, I hope, been part of the solution, and we are determined that we should intensify our efforts to help Somalia reach even more successes. So I would say I don't think presenting an overly optimistic view, but equally we should not get ground down in too much pessimism, because there is a lot to be thankful and hopeful for.
Absolutely, good. The UK is hosting the first Global Security Summit. Kindly tell us more about it and expand.
Yes, so we're delighted to be...
Somalia is taking part.
Absolutely. Somalia isn't just taking part, Somalia is a co-host of this event in London on the 20th of November, and His Excellency the President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed will be delivering the keynote address alongside our Prime Minister, which I think will be a fantastic opportunity for the two leaders. And it is designed to highlight the needs of the global population in accessing sustainable, affordable food supplies. And it's also about how can the international community help those countries that are most exposed to increased prices or climate shocks to access a sustainable supply of food. And we think that Somalia's voice needs to be absolutely heard front and centre at the summit, to an audience that hopefully will come up with a plan, both a short and long-term plan, to help address some of the most difficult issues in that space.
Speaking of climate change, Somalia is one of the countries that least contributes to global emission, yet it bears the brunt of global warming. What's the UK doing maybe to alleviate this problem?
Yes, well, I think firstly your question was very well put, because I think it is absolutely recognising the issue and acknowledging that issue, that Somalia did not create the problem of climate change, but they are bearing the brunt of it as I think probably one of the second or third most exposed countries in the world. And we have seen that in terms of, in recent years, long-term droughts and then flash flooding, and with the risks of El Nino around the corner, I think we can see just how vulnerable many communities in Somalia are. So I think the UK's leadership is incredibly important in helping the wider international community acknowledge the situation that Somalia faces, and that they should not be left alone to address that. And I would say there are many potential solutions, but the most important, in the interest of time, the most important I think to stress is to help Somalia address how do they start the process of adapting their economy and their country to dealing with the effects of climate change, and how do they access the technical expertise and, most crucially, the very significant financing, the green climate financing, to allow them to invest in their economy, to support the communities that are most exposed, and to start to reverse the worst effects of climate change. This is probably a very long-term project. If one looks at Somalia's 2060 ambition, when Somalia will be celebrating 100 years since independence, I'm not saying that nothing can change in the next 40 years, but we should definitely think about the long-term effects and start that process now. That is really partly what the food security event is about, partly what the UK partnership with Somalia is about, and helping start that process.
Now we cross over to security issues. What's your assessment of the government's operation against Al-Shabaab insurgents? The first phase is already winding up. The government just recently announced the commencement of the second phase of operations. What's your take?
So, firstly, the UK government is fully supportive of the President's approach to countering Al-Shabaab, and we congratulate him and recognise him and the people of Somalia, the Somali National Armed Forces, for the efforts that they have made, the sacrifices that they have made in taking the fight to Al-Shabaab, because this is a terrible terrorist group that has wreaked havoc on this country for many years, and it needs to be taken on immediately. So we are full of support for the approach in countering Al-Shabaab. We are also cognizant of the fact that it is not always going to be success every day of the week. We recognise there will be successes and there will be setbacks, and we have seen some of those in recent weeks and months. But we know that this government is very committed to investing in the Somali security forces, accessing the technology, the equipment and the training that will best serve them in their effort to fight Al-Shabaab. And the UK as an individual country, but also as part of the collective core security partners group, is very motivated to ensure that we provide Somalia with that level of support. For the UK, that largely means through training and expert advice, both to the Ministry of Defence, to the Chief of the Defence Forces, to ATMIS, to the United Nations missions that support the logistics and other elements of the effort. But we are increasingly doing that in a more coordinated, coherent way, and I can describe some of that in more detail if you would like.
The Somali government argues that the embargo is bogging down the country's ability to combat the Al-Shabaab insurgents. As Somalia's penholder at the United Nations Security Council, what's the UK doing maybe to help Somalia?
Yes, so we are very proud as a permanent member of the Security Council and as the penholder for Somalia in the UN of the role that we have played and are continuing to play. And just to say that the arms control resolution that currently exists does not prevent Somalia from importing the weapons and ammunition that it requires to fight Al-Shabaab. However, we know what a priority the President attaches to a full lifting of the controls, and that the focus should be on controlling the weapons that get to the field and that could get into the hands of Al-Shabaab. So we all recognise that the common enemy is Al-Shabaab and that we need to put a tight control on them, but not on the security forces that are fighting them. We are actually at a very critical phase of the mandate on the arms control resolution, and let us see what the coming days hold. But I am quietly confident that we will reach an outcome that Somalia can support and that helps them in the best possible way take that fight to Al-Shabaab and gives them the confidence to be able to do so.
Still on security issues, well, this internal, there's been the war in Las Anod, the Somaliland, and many humanitarian organizations have termed there have been a lot of atrocities and human rights aggravations that have been made in Las Anod. Will the UK support full investigation of the atrocities committed in those areas?
So I think I have three messages for everybody who has a strong interest in the situation in Las Anod. And I was in Hargeisa last week for meetings with the President of Somaliland and some opposition party leaders. My three messages are: number one, there should be no more conflict. The last thing that area needs is another battle or a war. So no counteroffensive, no further action on the part of SSC Khartoum-led forces. The key now is to enter into peaceful dialogue. That is number one. Number two is that international human rights and humanitarian law must have primacy. So all sides, anybody with an interest in peace, should be thinking very carefully about humanitarian law. International humanitarian law is critically important. And thirdly, I would urge the key parties to be considering how can they start the process of dialogue. That does not mean we are talking about what is the end state, but we have to move forward from angry rhetoric, and I would urge both sides to consider how can they start the process towards exchanging detainees on both sides. There are people being held in Las Anod, there are people being held in Hargeisa, and I would urge both sides to start that process. If they need third parties, whether that is the federal government of Somalia or an international organisation like ICRC to support that. I have no doubt that those individuals, those organisations are ready to help, and the UK will play whatever meaningful role we can. But the issue at the moment, the key issue, is to avoid any further conflict, obviously adhere to international humanitarian law and start some form of dialogue. It is hugely important.
On the same note, there's been political turmoil, although it's internal in Puntland. There's been an election crisis. Maybe your take?
So I think that the same issues apply essentially. We recognise that there is a difference of opinion over the date and form of elections in Puntland between President Denny and the opposition, and various groups of clan elders have made their voices heard and are making their voices heard. I think even last night in Garaway there was an incident. So we're worried about the potential for escalation, and actually I will be having conversations with some of the key figures in the coming days to urge restraint on them, and to again get round the table and reach consensus. I should say that both of these regions that we are talking about, Somaliland and Puntland, have a history of peaceful consensus building. So they have avoided largely conflict through trying to forge agreement through dialogue. And so I would encourage them to go back to those principles that have served them well in the past, and to consider what is in the best interests of the people of Puntland and therefore the wider public, and that is to find a way through. Again, it is up to the key participants themselves to reach those agreements, but I know, having spoken to key figures in the federal government of Somalia, that they stand ready to assist. The UK, other security partners will be talking about this, in fact, tomorrow as a group, so we are ready to lean in where we can, but primarily this is an issue for the key figures in the federal member state of Puntland to address and resolve, and I know they have the motivation and the wherewithal to do it.
Now we cross over to economic development. What's a general assessment on Somalia's economic progress, and what role maybe UK is playing in its debt relief process?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. I mean, I honestly believe Somalia deserves very significant credit for the progress that it has made towards HIPC, heavily indebted poor countries, completion point. Inshallah, it will happen in the next couple of months. When they reached the decision point in 2020, we were very pleased at that milestone, and that took a lot of hard work. The UK is proud to have been Somalia's debt relief champion since 2017, but the large part of the credit goes to this government and its predecessors for the progress that it has made. And I really think that the UK, other individual donors to the international financial institutions, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, other financial institutions deserve some credit for the advocacy that they have given to the issue, the support that they have provided the Somali system. But we are pleased to be working closely with the Minister of Finance, his key team, in helping them reach this milestone. It does not come without risks, because of course it means there is a different approach to the concessional lending and the grants that Somalia has been accessing. There will be a follow-on program that is required. Financial governance and the continued reform of the economic and financial system are incredibly important. So we know that there are challenges ahead. The need to increase the revenue generation so as to enhance the budget that Somalia has at its disposal to spend on priorities like health and education and attracting investment. Those are all incredibly important. So it's a long-term approach, but we think there is a real benefit to the point that is being reached very soon, and we are very pleased about it, and I hope it will come up during the President's visit to the United Kingdom. Somalia
is currently seeking to join the East Africa Community Bloc, as you've stated, really doing a good progress economic-wise. What could this mean for Somalia?
Well, I need to understand what the initial membership will mean both for Somalia and for the other parties in the community. But I think it can only be a good thing if there is a closer opportunity to trade with your nearest neighbours. I mean, we all know that there is a huge amount of trade done by the people who are geographically closest to you, and we all know about the borders with Djibouti, Ethiopia and Kenya, but there are obviously other countries in the region who could benefit from the enormous Somalia coastline that could be a conduit for imports and exports and increased trade, which would help the maritime economy of Somalia and would help the countries in the Horn of Africa access more easily products and services. So it's all linked back to security. The better the security environment, the more comfort investors will have in coming to Somalia, and I would anticipate that would open a huge flow of investment from the diaspora in the United Kingdom and in other parts of the world, but also from other businesses in the region who will see the entrepreneurial spirit, the enterprising nature of Somalis that will allow them to take the risks that are necessary to step into that business environment. So I hope that the East Africa Community opportunity really unlocks and unleashes the potential that Somalia definitely has to rapidly grow its economy as part of a more connected regional community.
Now, and lastly, as we wind up, where do you see Somalia in the maybe next 5 years?
In 5 years, I see Somalia inviting me back to Mogadishu in 2028 for a holiday where I can travel more freely around the city. I don't know, go to Lido Beach for a swim perhaps.
Probably bring your daughter.
Actually see some more of the country, visit some of the businesses that will have opened, see British companies led by British Somalis perhaps in telecoms, in water, electricity, in IT, starting to flourish. We shouldn't be unrealistic. Some of these will be incremental, steady gains, but remember what His Excellency the President said when he took office. He wants to see a Somalia at peace with itself and at peace with the rest of the world, and I think that is an achievable and attainable goal, and the UK is 100% committed to helping them achieve it.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for granting us the opportunity to have a sit-down interview with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been lovely talking to you.